Nick G. This is my couch. I'm Nick G, the dude on the couch. I'm coming out. I see nobody talking this morning, and I am so bored with the conversation. It's not news. It's all speculation. It's all, what do you think Donald Trump is thinking? What do you think he's doing? It's all talking about Iran. It's talking about Israel. There is no ceasefire. As soon as they say there's a ceasefire, there's no ceasefire. You know it. Israel right now is fucking with Lebanon. They're killing people. It's genocide. Those words, genocide, that word, yeah, that's happening. It's not a conversational, topical buzzword. It's literally people dying. I keep thinking about this, right? Because I'm in New York, upstate New York. I'm 45 minutes north of Albany. I'm, I don't know, an hour from Vermont. You know what I mean? This is one of the best places in the United States. Like I can't think about living someplace else. You know what I'm saying? I was talking to my friend in Florida, and he was, I don't know, complaining about something. And I was telling him, come to New York. We got farms, we got woods, we have wildlife, we have lakes, we have none of the problems. None of the problems. Like even our area has elected officials that do the work for us. You know what I'm saying? I mean, granted, they're bringing money into the area that's kind of kicking out poor folks, but until we start organizing as broke folks to take care of broke folks, money doesn't give a fuck about us. It never has and never will. That's not what citizenship's about. A dollar. This is me holding my one. A dollar doesn't give a fuck about you. But a person next to another person will give a shit, or at least kind of be in their own space. You know what I mean? I mean, even if I'm at Stewart's is our local New York coffee shop, dairy shop. You get your ice cream there. Um, if I'm staying at Stewart's and they're going in and they're getting their breakfast pizza or whatever, I'm holding the breakfast door. You know what I'm saying? If they're grabbing a shitty slice, I'd be like, hold on, my man. I see them bringing a new one. That's the interaction of life to life. That's why when you come around a pet, it sniffs you. That's why if a bug comes around you, it tastes your salt, tastes your, you know what I mean? That's what life does. Life interacts with life, even if you're on the downside of life, meaning, you know, predator prey kind of thing. Good morning, Michelle. Good morning. Um, you know, when we're talking about life, we're interacting with life. We're in a place now where we don't interact with life. We've divided up our culture to a point where, you know, every one person finds another person, makes more people, and lives in one house, and that becomes these small communities. I know in our house, one of the teens doesn't speak to me directly, and it's not like I did anything wrong. It's just, you know, they got their jam. The other teen, you know, does their teen thing. I'm not cool, so they don't talk to me either. You know what I mean? I got my girlfriend, and she tells me straight up, my job is to hold her boobs when she's sleeping, and get her biscuits when she asks, and the rest of that is my time. You know what I mean? People are people. People want to interact with how they interact. People want to interact with each other, but we don't have the build to have a community conversation. Substack, on the other hand, Substack does have that. Um, Substack is one of the best things that I've experienced as far as being part of a community. I get so excited about it. I get excited talking about it. I tell my friends that they need to come to Substack, the artists, the creatives. Um, and they're all like, oh, I don't want to. Another social media, I don't want it. It's like, you don't get it. Some people tune into the news and they get the news. Other people, they like I talked about Stewart's right now. I know there's 5 men sitting at the picnic table out front, drinking their Stewart's coffee, eating their egg which, reading their newspaper. And I know that right now. That's community. That's happening in small towns everywhere right now. I know that people who are going to do labor jobs, city jobs, town jobs, They're stopping at Stewart's right now. They're getting their coffees, their egg witches, their Red Bulls. I'm over here playing around a little bit with a piece that I wrote. I call it Hidden Substack. What this piece is talking about, I actually got thinking about it in the sense that I was watching Voyager, and there's these Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek guy here. Let me disclaim that. And it's a 2-part episode. It's called The Killing Game. You come into it and you're watching all of your Star Trek people from Voyager wearing people clothes and all that stuff. You know what I mean? And the captain, she owns a bar in which everybody kind of goes down and hangs out. She has a rule: the war doesn't come into this building, that kind of stuff. But in it, you see the Nazis. You see the Nazis breaking down somebody's bread, looking for messages, dumping out wine so they could see on the back of a label if there's communications and stuff like that. And to me, that's Substack. We are in a place now where we're talking to each other. So I wrote this piece, and it's about how Substack is basically we're the resistance. We don't come up on any search. In this piece, I talk about how there was an episode of where I was listening to Lev. I say episode like it's a TV show, where Lev was talking, and all of a sudden he went quiet on the TV, the screen, and he takes a personal phone call, and he comes back. I feel like it was maybe with Zev and Dean, but he comes back and he says, "Yeah, I just heard somebody who just heard from Stephen Miller, XYZ." That's how inside Substack meetings are. I see a lot of people who are coming in from mainstream media. They're trying to get into their Substack. And, and this is actually what I wrote around the piece. I also want to make note. I'm an old head. This image is based off Leisure Suit Larry. If any of you guys ever played video games and stuff like that, Leisure Suit Larry was an early video game for the computer. Basically, he's a dirtbag, and he's trying to get laid, and that's the whole gimmick. You know what I'm saying? So I thought it was funny to use the Leisure Suit Larry thing. I don't know. It made me laugh because the password Ken sent me is something that I use all the time. So anyway, I just used the Leisure Suit Larry graphic so I could have the outside. That's the bar. In this article, and like I say, I was really kind of flying off about how mainstream media, they just talk, they just chatter, name brand people, Katie Couric. When I listen to Bulwark, Crooked, Midas, they use this narration, these buzzwords. So in this, I'm just talking about the value of people that I get from Substack, and how I get inside scoop, how I'll sit in with Michael Harriot and Contraband Camp at 9 a.m. and I'll listen for an hour about everything that I didn't know. Anyway, this image right here, this door over here on the side, that's the password. Boom, boom, boom. It's a Naugahyde door. You knock on it. At the time, you wonder how many Nagas had to die for this door. Ha ha. So you knock on the door. The window slides open. What's the password? The password is Ken sent me. In this, tell your friends that Nick Gianna dude sent me. I found it funny. Substack is the resistance. Substack is where we're listening to people talk. And they're saying the most factual, the most common sense things that you could possibly hear out of somebody's mouth. And it's refreshing because you're like, holy shit, did I just hear that? Every morning when we're listening to Malcolm Nance and he's talking about what's happening in Iran from firsthand people who are speaking to people in Iran, firsthand people who are speaking to people in Lebanon. You don't get that on the news. They don't bring in knowledgeable people and experts. They bring in characters. Because as soon as they see somebody's hitting, they just want to bring them back so they can have that value. I think about Morning Joe, which I haven't watched Morning Joe in like years. I personally, right now in 2026, will not give MS Now a click for anything. Not for Rachel Maddow, not for Lawrence, not for whoever. I will not give them a click. I will not give them an eyeball. I will not give them a channel change. I will not give them a timed viewership. I will not even on YouTube, not on any of this stuff. I won't. MS Now, if you are showing up on MS Now, you are a sellout. If you are hosting a show on MS Now, you are a sellout. There's no reason. There's no reason. What would make a difference? I'll tell you what would make a difference. Rachel Maddow getting her fucking lawyer, going to MS Now and saying, I have something better, because she should. She should have something better. All of the respect that Rachel Maddow has built her life to create resonate. She's the past right now. She's a ghost. She doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? In a day, Rachel Maddow's name doesn't show up in any journalism headlines anywhere. Nowhere. I'll see Lawrence before I see Rachel. She's nobody now. I appreciate her Ultra Series. As a matter of fact, I made a reference yesterday to Ernest Lundeen, that now we're in a place where Ernest Lundeen is the Republican Party. The entire Republican Party is Ernest Lundeen. Who is Ernest Lundeen? Ernest Lundeen was a congressperson who was letting the Nazis run out of his office because they could mail to their constituents for free. Like the government would pay for it. And so they were using this mechanism from a congressperson's office to mail Nazi literature to people. This one guy gets at an airport, and this is the best that I can recollect because I don't cite sources. I'm a dude on a couch. I'm not a scholar. He gets on a plane. There was a struggle with him getting on the plane, physical struggle, where he ends up getting on the plane with other people. The plane, as it's understood, when they listen to the radio, it was like you just hear the velocity opening up. This plane was up in the air, and it ran into the ground, and it ran like straight into the ground, like somebody was throwing a lawn dart, and it went into the ground so deep. And one of the things that Ernest Lundeen, the plane that he was on, after I did it, they found the actual script of a speech that he was supposed to read that was written like directly from the Fuhrer in Nazi Germany. And this is they physically, I've seen images of it. I don't feel like digging it up because you know what I mean? It's just an anecdote. But we have an entire Congress of Ernest Lundeens. We talk about Israel. Bibi Netanyahu sat at the end of the table in the war room where our American president is supposed to sit. Don went and sat someplace else. I'm calling him Don. He's not our president. He's some dude. Don. Fucking Don. Not even President Trump. Don. So Don goes and sits somebody at someplace else where Bibi Netanyahu sits at the end of the table and briefs our American executive branch and intelligence on what he wanted for the mission. You know what I'm saying? We are being manipulated by Israel. We are being very manipulated by Russia. Very manipulated by Russia. Everything's back channel. Like I said, about a month ago, I got fired from Target. I worked there for 6 years. Early on, I realized you cannot go to leadership. You cannot go to human resources. You cannot go to a trainer and get results. So after I seemingly dropped out of all that production, you know what I mean? I stopped talking to people that I felt like that was their role to help. And I started doing my own thing. I don't talk to people directly. I watch who they talk to. You know what I'm saying? There'd be hundreds of people on a shift. There's hundreds of people right there right now. You don't have to speak directly to people to influence them. And that's what I do. I don't directly speak to people. I talk to somebody at lunch. I talk to somebody at break. I talked to somebody when we were throwing cartons off a cart to influence that guy over there, to find out what's going on with that dude over there. We don't do that. We don't have that. Don set off to the side and let war criminals use our event to attack people. All I hear this morning is the 25th Amendment. Oh my goodness, all I hear is the 25th Amendment. which we should. I have a running theory. That J.D. Vance is, yes, he was trying to help Viktor Orban campaign and all that stuff. But I kind of get the feeling that he's trying to rally. He's trying to rally the influence that controls Donald Trump and get the okay to replace Donald Trump. I feel like he is over there right now assuring the handlers, look, guys, if you give it to me, we can still do this thing. You know what I mean? That's what I feel is happening. When our news talks about Viktor Orban, we don't cover Viktor Orban. We cover the Republican Party. We don't cover where Viktor Orban's walking, where he's doing, who he's hanging with, who he's talking to. We just don't. But we do drop his name when we're talking about the Confederate Republican Party doing nefarious shit to the United States. We sure do drop his name. Viktor Orban. CPAC. The way that these things should be covered is our American elected officials choose to go interact with foreign entities that are killing people, that are committing genocides. You know? That's the coverage. This guy wants to go hang with dirtbags who kill people, who kill their citizens. But instead, we laugh, we kiki, we ha-ha about his mascara. We laugh, we kiki about Donald Trump's orange face mask. We don't talk about stuff. We don't talk about the law. I was actually just watching, and I posted it. I was watching Roland Martin. And it's funny to me because on the screen, I will see 5 faces, Roland Martin and 4 other people. I'll see a 10, 12-minute clip, and I'll watch it because I like to share that stuff to Substack. You guys aren't watching Black Star Network. I'm watching Black Star Network. You guys aren't watching Urban View, listening to Urban View. I'm watching Urban View, and I'm posting those videos. So that's why I'm dropping Greg Carr. That's why I'm dropping Roland Martin. That's why I'm dropping Karen Hunter, Larry Daniel Favors. You know what I mean? That's why I'm dropping all that stuff, because you don't do it. That's what I'm watching. So when I'm watching that stuff and I'm going back to Roland Martin, I'll see a 15-minute clip with 5 people. It'll literally just be Roland Martin talking for 10, 15 minutes because he has all this in there. Now he has this big screen behind him. He has a platform. He'll have books. Homeboy's pulling up books, citing. Now that's Roland Martin. Every Saturday I watch In Class with Professor Greg Carr from Howard University and Karen Hunter on Narrative, Knarritive. And it's very much in the same vein. Now, why is this very much in the same vein? When Caucasian Americans, when European heritage Americans are talking about their stuff, they speak on it in the presence, they speak on it in the shorthand, in their buzzwords. You know what I mean? When I'm listening to Black media, lineage and history is everything. You are not going to hear the president is doing this. You're going to hear about the 14th Amendment, the 8th Amendment. You're going to hear about the actual laws that are being violated. You're going to hear about your actual rights. When I'm listening to, I'm already avoiding talking about certain people because I think that's just going to spin off. But when I'm listening to a more traditional news source, when I'm listening to the news sources that come in to Substack from, trad media and stuff like that, they speak in the it's almost like a TMZ way of talking about news. You know what I mean? How would Nick Guyette cover? Oh, that's me, Nick Guyette. I always get a kick out of it because Guillet, that's the French name, Guillet. It's like if you walk up to a little kid, hey, what's up, little man? That's what Guyette is. What's up, little man? Which fits because I'm 5'6", 150 pounds. I don't get much bigger. When I'm listening to media, on Substack, it's different because, like, for example, when I hear Walter Rein, I'm like, yeah, share. When I'm listening to Zev Shalev, I'm like, yeah, share. Ellie, oh my gosh. Ellie went from being the person that spoke about Epstein stuff, Ellie Leonard, to being this absolute consciousness of citizenship. When she's talking, I'm like, yeah. And I like and I share all her shit. Because that's where we're getting news. Substack. We're listening to conversations. I showed you that piece that I wrote. It's called Hidden Substack. The whole premise of it is when I'm searching stuff on ChatGPT, when I'm searching stuff on Grok, when I'm searching stuff on Claude, when I'm using the Google, was it Gemini? When I'm using the Google AI, it doesn't see Substack. I will literally record, you know what I mean, like voice record and have it put into text, transcribe, and I'll put in actual words from actual stuff and things that are lined up in a very legitimate sense in a conversation. When input into our AIs and all that stuff, it comes up like it's speculation, allegedly, and all that stuff. We are getting firsthand information. We are interacting, like I said in that example, we are interacting in ways that's we are the resistance. We are the resistance. Lev Parnas is running for office now. Well, he's building up to run for office. And in it, anytime we log on, he's got over 1,000 people in his thing. If he had an actual message, and he does, he has messages. If he had a message every day, that was the same message every day. If he had a call for action that wasn't a link, if Lev Parnas had a phrase, a buzzword, a call to action, we have 1,000 people that do that. Same thing with Wajahat Ali. He isn't an activist. He has the potential to be an activist. He doesn't have a message. He doesn't have a gimmick. He says gimmicky shit. But he doesn't have a gimmick. He doesn't have it. He's commentary. You know what I'm saying? Jennifer Welch. I wrote a piece about Jennifer Welch talking about intellectual constituency. And my whole premise is I want Jennifer Welch to be the president of the United States. I trust her judgment. Yesterday I'm watching iHip. And Angie Sullivan says to her, weren't you gonna? And she goes, yeah, but I like just kind of talking shit and gossiping instead. And it broke my heart. But I get it. That's all of us. That's why the people who get elected to office are the people who we get to choose from. Not because those are the best people, but because those are the people who are willing to do the dirtbag shit. I was watching an interview with Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday, day before, time isn't real. And I'm from New York. I'm from upstate New York. It's not weird for local property to have Civil War cemeteries on them, Revolutionary War cemeteries. It's just not weird. That's the area I live in. We have woods, we have trees, we have lakes, we have mountains. Where I live, I guess physically, visually, it could look like Appalachia. So, I mean, even down in Georgia, where that's where she's from, right? Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Even down in Georgia where Marjorie Taylor Greene lives, there's going to be a commonality to what we do. But culturally, you know what I'm saying? She don't get going down to Stewart's. You know what I'm saying? Around here, we have people who are into fish culture, fishing. But really, we're just we're like a consumer area, if that makes any sense. I mean, we have the mountains that people climb. I'm trying to remember. I think there's 46 of them. Yeah, because once you meet the requirements where you have climbed each of the peaks, you're called a 46er because there's 46 of them. Check me on that. I don't know. And so I mean, there's that. We have a healthy camping, type of stuff. But it's 2026. We've as a culture we've spread out from our technology. But I'm coming back to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Listened to an interview with her yesterday, and I almost want to go back and write about it because yes, she said some crazy shit. But this is also what happens when you send regular people into Congress. I'm sure I believe weird shit that if I was talking to a greater public, you know what I'm saying, people would be like, "Oh no, that guy's a little fucked." I actually have a piece that I'm writing because I'm running into conflict with people who I am an ally from jump. Like I forced myself to learn more, so I'm an ally from jump, and I'm being met with conflict because they don't want dialogue. They want to tell me about me. I'm a Caucasian, straight dude. I can tell you all about my perspective, my culture. One thing I'm not going to do is go and tell a gay, a trans, survivor, somebody of a different ethnicity, a different heritage. I'm not going to tell them about themselves. I'm going to tell them my perspective. I'm going to tell them, oh, I thought. But the dialogue is everything. You know what I'm saying? Even when I'm pointing to my house, when my girlfriend and I have our issues, you know what I mean? I'm very much me. She's very much she. When we have our conflicts and stuff like that, I hold nobody's grudge. You can be mad at me all fucking day. I'm still going to ask you if you want anything when I go out to the kitchen. If I'm grabbing myself a snack, I'm still making breakfast for my person. You know what I'm saying? If I'm leaving the room where we hang out, I live on this couch. If I'm not sleeping, I'm right here in this cushion. But if I'm leaving the room and I'm picking up her trash too. You know what I'm saying? As soon as you stop talking, as soon as the dialogue ends, that's where everything starts being inky, funky. Never stop talking. When her and I are fighting, I ask for periods of time where we don't talk. Because I am fact-based, trend-based. I refuse to be gaslit. You will never be in a conversation with me and be like, whoa, 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 that's not right. All I said was, nope, we are not going to begin in the retcon retelling of a story. What happened. I had my I had my experience with it. You had yours. We were both in our different headspace. But being in a physical environment isn't being in a mental environment. You know what I'm saying? A mental environment isn't real, but it's real. So when I'm having dialogue with somebody in conflict, you never want to stop talking. You want to start talking about the plain things. When her and I are in conflict, I'll beg, put something on the TV that we can both just check out on. Because in a moment, only thing you're thinking about is that moment to pick. Actually, when we start having conflict, once the conflict is recognized, one of the first things that we say, I say we, it's become our culture. Have you eaten? Did you eat yet? Can I get you something to eat? When was the last time you ate? Can I get you a snack? Our brain chemicals aren't our brain chemicals. I mean, as a human being, we generate our chemicals. We do our thing. Our gut bacteria, when we feed it fiber, does this little happy farts that makes our guts even happier. You know what I'm saying? It's not like those bacteria aren't still going to eat your food, break it down. But if you feed them right stuff, they do right stuff. And sometimes when they're just naturally going through their process, anything in your body, your brain, your chemicals, your balance, you know, anytime you're doing that stuff, you're becoming somebody else. You're still the meat. You're still the potential. But if you're not eating, you know what I'm saying? The difference between me before the pizza and me after the pizza is I'm not going to be so funny. I'm probably going to be short, and I'm probably going to be intolerant at nonsense. You know what I'm saying? When I am hungry, I am a motherfucker, and I'm not polite. I'm very straightforward. You know what I mean? But recognizing that's the issue. You know what I mean? But I'm going back to what I was talking about, dialogue. You never want to stop a dialogue. There are times where you may not want to talk. There are times where you may not want to talk to that somebody. But a dialogue is important. One of the things I've enjoyed lately on Substack is Talib Kweli, half a black star. A white kid growing up in the rap world. Black Star wasn't talking to me. Older man, educated, read. I listen to conversations. You know what I mean? Now when I'm listening to Talib Kweli, I'm watching him take on ignorance. I'm watching him take on racism, Nazism, even in myself trying to be like, wait a second, man, that's not right, talking to some of the people giving him shit. All I did was buy myself a day of being called all kinds of like, you know, faggot, nigger lover, other stuff, kike. You know what I mean? It's like they will just drop names that are intended to upset somebody. Words aren't real. Words aren't real. If words were real, when I hear the word woke, it wouldn't be a polling buzzword for somebody like Sarah Longwell to say, is woke bad politics? That shit don't happen. If you are educated, which Sarah Longwell fucking is not, you can be book smart. You can have diplomas on the back of your fucking wall. You can have checks put into your pocket and still be ignorant as fuck, like Sarah Longwell. I wrote a piece about it. It's called Sarah Longwell is a Loser. Check out my shit. I wrote it because she is. She pissed me off. But I got distracted because once I started hating on Sarah Longwell, so I'm just going to go that way. I wrote a piece about Sarah Longwell being a fucking loser. She pissed me off. Nah, I disagree with her a lot. But she pissed me off in this sense that she was shitting on Hassan Piker. My problem with the Bulwark, they all write stuff, but they don't read each other's stuff at all. It's just they write it, they give it to us to consume. And then when Tim Miller, JVL, Sarah Longwell, did you read it? I'll get to it. Kinda. You either back your work or you don't. Sarah Longwell, my personal feeling is she doesn't fit in. She built a character that she was able to create a niche around. Yes, I'm going to read it. My dude, this is Neurodivergent Hodgepodge. Words are real and it matters how you use them. They have power. If they did not, storytelling would not have power. But with that being said, laws which are written in words are powerful. Neuro, I'm going to push back on the law because laws are written, so no definition can be stuck. But also with words aren't defined until we define them. When I'm talking about woke, when I hear the word woke, back to what I was talking about, because I just remembered. Thank you, Neuro. When I'm talking about woke, there's generational awareness behind the word woke. Yes, words are important. Words are important, or else we'd be cats. The downside about words could mean nothing. Words could mean everything. Words could be the word that I'm using at face value means this, but I'm really doing this. You know what I mean? Communication is greater than words. If I'm talking to somebody and they don't hear a fucking word that I said, you know what I'm saying? When I'm talking to somebody and they aren't listening because they've already got the words in their mouth. You know what I'm saying? I think words, I blame rap. Do I blame rap? Kind of. Growing up listening to music, there's this many words in a song. Growing up listening to rap, so many words get put to a 4 or 5 minute track that it dilutes meaning. You know what I mean? Because a lot of words are repeated, catchphrased, gimmicks, bumper stickers. Back to woke. Woke is history. Woke is knowing who the good and the bad actors are. Woke is knowing lineage, history, communication, organization. But Sarah Longwell pulls it. You know what I mean? What is awareness? No, I like that question. What is awareness? With me, I think of those plasma balls used to buy from woke is awareness. Yes, it is. Very much so. I do that too. I use speech to text and then I look at it. I'm like, is that what I said? I think of those plasma balls you used to get at Spencer's. You know what I mean? Boop, you put your finger on it and the little lightning beam would shoot to your finger. To me, that's awareness. If everybody puts their fingers on the ball, it stretches the plasma so all the lightnings go to the different spaces, but everybody's getting a different branch. To me, that's the static of awareness, like spider sense. Right now, as I'm sitting here, I know where every cat is. I know where all the bodies in my house are. You know what I'm saying? That's my awareness. My awareness is knowing as soon as I start hearing noises, I know where the noise is, where I'm aware of who's up and what I need to do. You know what I mean? If I hear Big Mama waking up, I know I'm fixing to go get breakfast for everybody. You know what I mean? If I hear the kids waking up, they just go and they shut themselves in the room and, they young people or whatever it is they do. We don't learn about history. We don't learn about our American history. And this I actually wrote one piece. I wrote a piece last week about Jane McRae. There's a sign, I don't know, about 2 miles away. Jane McRae's house. Jane McRae is a local conversation piece. There's paintings of Jane McRae and Iroquois. Iroquois are who were in our area when we colonized. So that's who the British were working with. The British were working with the Iroquois. The Patriots was the colonized people who were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We live here now. We are not British people. We are American. This is us. Jane McRae was engaged to a British soldier. She stayed behind the lines. Now I'm pointing over here. Where am I? Jane McRae is over there. She was killed in this region. The story as it goes is Jane McRae was killed. General Gates wrote a letter to the newspapers, put it out, wrote it to General John Burgoyne. General John Burgoyne was north, taking Fort Ticonderoga. Gates, I believe, if my history is correct, because I'm only learning about this now because our local history is propaganda. So I'm in Hudson Falls. Fort Edward's next to us. Fort Edward is where General Gates was. They had felled trees so Burgoyne couldn't advance. Burgoyne makes it to Ticonderoga. Ticonderoga is a couple hours from here by car, so days and days. So John Burgoyne, it was his guys who were part of the British. Jane McCrae was killed. As the story goes, the colonizers, British, they say that the Iroquois men scalped her, killed her. They love white women trophies. The guy's name, the native, he was an Iroquois. His name was Loup, L-U-P-E. I assume that's a wolf reference. So his name was Loup. I believe Loup. He says, y'all started shooting at me. You shot this white woman. Ipso facto, y'all killed this woman. So that's the story. And as I'm doing my research, nobody can validate, nobody can this. White people were keeping souvenirs of black people that they were hanging. Like it's like people were keeping toes, people were keeping ears, people were keeping finger bones. You know what I'm saying? Of black people that were being hung. I'm more likely to lean with Loup than the white people because colonizers are dirtbags. And they lie. That's why Ben Franklin amazes me. We revere Ben Franklin. We give him credit for the Fourth Estate. The Fourth Estate is propaganda. You know what I mean? Bing! It's a 50-50 chance that you're going to get somebody that tells the truth because there's a 50-50 chance you're going to get a bag of shit. America. That has a really long and sinister history to before American colonies even existed. Sure. Communities got along. They had their conflict. When people are saying that it was black people who sold slaves to white people, Europeans, they weren't black people. They were people. They were neighbors. You know what I mean? I got neighbors I don't like. Shit, there was a house down the end of the block that flew a Confederate flag for 24 hours. And I only point out that 24 hours because the night before I went to the store and I saw the Confederate flag. That morning, my girlfriend came home from work at 6 a.m. The Confederate flag was still there. But by afternoon, the Confederate flag was gone. Like, we have people that fly the rebel flag as the rebel flag, not meaning Confederates, but in our media environment, it means what it fucking means. I wonder what you do mean, neurodivergent. I'm not wrong, but that's not what you mean. We have, in America, a lot of conflict. A lot. The communities, they don't grow and stay growing. You know what I mean? They grow out of necessity. A lot of our, like I look at Central Park, Seneca Village, as I call it. It was black people. It was German people. Maybe Italian people. My point is, they were getting along. They were a community. They had churches. They had, now think about it, same thing in Saratoga. Saratoga has a place. Right now, Saratoga Springs, New York is money. Money. And, God, the money. The people that own everything don't actually live there. They live elsewhere. But they own property that has high value. In Saratoga Springs, they wiped out where the black folks live. Now, when I'm talking about Saratoga Springs, I'm talking about Solomon Northup. I'm talking about um, there's a church in Saratoga on Washington. They literally built the church so Abraham Lincoln could speak at it. Like it did not exist. They built it because this man was coming to speak. But in it was this black neighborhood that they completely wiped out so they could start building higher value property. You know what I'm saying? But same thing with Seneca Village. We have Central Park because they wiped out the black and brown communities. Hi-8 is the same thing. The government says, yes, we want to invest in your area. The citizens of Hi-8, they voted for it. Yes, help us. Thank you. And then they built a fucking freeway through their land. We helped you. Now you got to move, bitch. Because the houses never ended up getting rebuilt. They just tore them down, middle finger. You know what I mean? I'm not hearing like news this morning. I'm hearing speculation. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about the 25th Amendment. I'm hearing a lot of talk about this quote unquote ceasefire in Iran. The ceasefire that doesn't actually exist because Israel is literally wiping out Lebanon right now. We talk about Iran. We talk about Iran. We talk about the Strait of Hormuz. Words that I would not have been using 2 months ago, 3 months ago. You know what I mean? I'm a house music head. I'm a comic book guy. I like watching wrestling. You know what I mean? The fact that all I can think about and talk about right now is political nonsense and global shit blows my fucking mind. Because I don't want to talk about this stuff. I want the satisfaction of having honest things come into my ears. Everything can't be Zateo. You know what I mean? Everything can't be Amanda Seals. You know, everything can't be so in your face, openly honest that it's almost embarrassing that you're getting this much insight into somebody's personal life as they're giving you what they know. But that's where we are right now. You know, I was talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a normal fucking person. She's a normal fucking person. We're all weird. Don't get me started talking about Dulce, New Mexico, the alien base. Don't get me talking about Stanton Friedman and Roswell. You know what I'm saying? Don't get me talking about Bigfoot, El Chupacabra. I love that shit. Fuck. Don't get me talking about time travel because I'll start talking about John Teeter. But Marjorie Taylor Greene made it to Congress. She sat in the halls of Congress. She met with presidents. She met with leadership. She's all the lobbyists. And so when I say she's a citizen like the same as any of us, that's what she's doing now. She's processing out all the hype. And she's saying it doesn't matter who the fuck you think you got. Bernie Sanders? AOC? As soon as you hit Congress, everybody's coming to you. Everybody's lobbying you. Everybody's giving you these decisions. It's like you're being enclosed, where you're not connecting to the real world anymore. You're in this hyper bubble. You know? And listening to her say that, it made absolute sense. But then again, like I was talking about Jennifer Welch, I want Jennifer Welch to run for president. I want her to be president. I know every aspect of her philosophy when it comes to running America. I know where her moral core is. I know that when she starts talking, she isn't going to mince words. You know what I mean? Nothing makes me madder than someone who just doesn't say the fucking thing, dude. Nothing. You know, it really pisses me off when people they aren't here. They're here. What I like about Substack, it allows us to be ourselves. Ellie Leonard. I love Ellie Leonard. I love Ellie Leonard as a concept. I love the fact that she's interested in doing her thing, with the transcript. But when I see her going to events where she's elevated her position to see, when I see her going to events, that's the same person that I see on the screen. You know what I mean? That's the same person that I see everywhere. Got going on here. I see her wearing her hoodies, her t-shirts. The character that I see when she's at events is the same character I see everywhere else. I don't see the process of fitting in, And with that being said, that's why I watch a lot of black media. It's real people who want to show off the intellectual stuff that they picked up. We don't get that in Crooked. We don't get that in Bulwark. We really don't get that at Midas. Midas would be better if the Mycellus brothers would go away. Midas would be better if Michael Popak would just go away. Because they are the four people that keep that network from being legitimate. Facts. I don't need to see them every 90 minutes. I don't. I want to see Dina Dow. I want to see Scott McFarlane. I want to see Katie Fang. I want to see Allison Gill. The Midas Touch network is all grift. The Midas Touch network is all, like we talk about how Doge stole our data. That's what the Midas Touch network does, man. They want our data. They want our names. They want the mailing lists. They want the money. It's not. I get mad when I see them being celebrated because there was a time yes on Olga, yes on Julie. I think Julie would be better if she just dropped Michelle. I think Michelle Kenny is bagging Julie Roginski. I don't think that Michelle, like anytime, you know what? Now that I think about it, my gripe isn't with the Mayday Network. My gripe is with Michelle. It's not that I have a problem with her as a person, though. The more I hear her talk, the more I realize her and I would not get along as people. Michelle gets her news from the Bulwark. She gets her news from Instagram. She might as well just be reading memes like the rest of us. I am so not impressed with Michelle and her organizing. No shade. I'm just a dude on the couch. But what keeps me from watching Julie Roginski is I just think that Michelle's a bag on her. Like, wait. Julie Roginski I find absolutely fascinating. Russian, came to the United States in like 1980, 81, something like that. Her grandparents stayed back in Russia. I don't remember the whole deal, but I'm fascinated by Julie Roginski. As a matter of fact, I saw a Mayday thing the other day, and I was surprised because I'd forgotten about them. When Mayday Network started, I was live in, I was typing, I wrote an actual piece specifically to Julie Roginski and tagged her, which she read. But I forgot about it. And then I saw it the other day, and I was like, oh, y'all still around? Actually, the only reason that I recognize them anymore is when Dana Dubois shows up on them, because I break for Dana. I think she's a cool person, Dana Dubois. She writes a lot of like dating stuff, personal stuff, processing her life and her children's lives. You know what I'm saying? I'm fascinated by Dana's writing. I appreciate it. I like listening to her talk because it has this ASMR quality that I kind of dig. Yeah, Dana Dubois. We aren't talking to each other. We aren't talking to each other in a big sense. We aren't talking to each other in a small sense. I dialogue with, these people in the chat. Hello, all. That's my community. I walk outside my house. I speak to my neighbor because I worked with him at UPS. As a matter of fact, my first day at UPS, I was his assistant at Christmas time. That's how. So I was like, hey, I know you. I don't speak to anybody on my street. I don't speak to anybody in my block. When I go to the grocery store, there's always somebody like I went to school with. Hey, what's up, dude? That's about it. But here, I've got almost 300 people that I network with. You know what I mean? I read their stuff. I share their stuff. I comment on their stuff. You know what I mean? To me, this is a community that makes me smarter, makes me better, makes me more introspective. You know what I mean? And when I just go into political communities, it's like we all kind of chew on the same facts. Trump's a traitor, Russia, whatever. But it's not a dialogue. It's just validation. I try to engage with a lot of Black Americans. I love it because they have the information I don't. I didn't grow up Black. You can see this right here. I grew up very Caucasian. And people expect Caucasian things out of me. My Substack experience as white folks and Black folks are starting to dialogue, I'm starting to notice there's a lot less Black folks that want the dialogue, but they want to lecture the white people who are trying to engage with them, the Caucasians, the European heritage Americans. I don't need to be told about white people. I don't need to be yelled at about white people. I don't need to be yelled at like I'm white people. I don't need to be told, you guys, you people, you. That's not me. I don't fit in with white people because I don't believe in white people. Don't yell at me, Black person, about being white. I reject it too. You know what I'm saying? I have a Black girlfriend. I have Black friends. I have a very multicultural existence. You know what I mean? My news source, 75% of it comes from Howard University. You know what I mean? That's just my whole thing. I don't, like, I was getting blocked the other day because people would be lecturing white people and I'd chime in with something from my experience. Hey, but this, and I'm not denigrating anybody. But all of a sudden I'm getting lectured. Bum, 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 bum. I remember I had a friend that I worked with at Quad Graphics, and I don't know, she had real life stuff that I think she got into drugs. I don't know. Something fucked her up. So she was kind of put in a hospice. And she would have periods of time where she could use social media. And all of a sudden she's messaging me to talk to my white friends, meaning the staff at this place she was at. And I'm like, I don't even know where you are. You know what I'm saying? White friends? White what? We don't integrate like that. White people don't have a shared experience. There's the white people that get along with the whiteness. And then there's the rest of us that just fucking live our lives. You know what I'm saying? There are not a lot of Black people around where I live. There are a lot of Black people where I live in my specific area. It's just not a Black area. You know what I mean? Now think about it. The younger teen has a couple black friends that she goes to school with. Actually, I worked with them at UPS too. They're dead. Um, but we're a white region, predominantly white region. We're very tolerant. It's not like everybody isn't mixed in some way. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, now that I say that, the younger generation, there's a lot of mixed heritage, and it's not a bad thing. But as a matter of fact, my girlfriend, she's mixed. Her kids are mixed. Um, Mixing is just what we do because we don't have that separation culture. I don't want to be lectured about white people. I just don't. I agree. I do my research. I listen, whenever I hear something from Michael Harriot, whenever I hear something from Greg Carr, from the Reed Daniel Favors, from Karen Hunter, Clackety Clackety, Amanda Seals, Clackety Clackety. I'm looking stuff up. I want to know. Like I was just talking about Jane McCrae. She's a local hero. That word of mouth of Jane McCrae's murder got all the patriots in the area to enlist and fight against John Burgoyne, who was actually who Jane McCrae was supporting, a soldier in John Burgoyne's army. So Jane McCrae was a traitor who was a good-looking white chick who was killed. And instead of the British rallying around their dead soldiers chick, the Patriots rallied around this chick. They didn't talk about her politics, who she was engaged to. They just know that they killed a white local woman. So they armed. Now, why would the Patriots arm? Because the British were using the native people, the Iroquois, to fight their battles. And they're watching the Patriots in the area. They're watching the native people trash their shit. History. We don't talk about history. But why do I go to black media? They talk about history. They don't just tell you what the law is. They tell you how the law became into the role. They will name drop the people who did it. You know what I mean? They're in Philly. They're talking about the president's house in Philly where they took down all the signage. And don't you know, they put that shit right back up. We're losing our heritage. And we aren't losing our heritage to, we aren't losing it to a fascist movement. We don't talk about it. The movie Grease. I talk about it as an epiphany. You have the movie Grease and Grease 2. Because I'm a cool rider. Man, I love me some Grease, boy. I can tell you. I can Danny Zuko like anybody. But you have Grease 1 and 2. In the last year or two, they had a series called The Rise of the Pink Ladies, where it's a prequel. And in the prequel, you learn that they weren't Italian. They were Latin. They were Hispanic. They were native to the region that they lived in. But in the 60s, the 50s or whatever, you just didn't talk about it. You weren't Hispanic. You were Italian. Being Italian was more acceptable. You know what I mean? And actually, now I'm thinking about it. Recently I've been filling out applications and they ask about being Hispanic. And then they start asking about being non-Hispanic white. It's a fabrication. It's a fabrication. My kid's mom, she runs a restaurant. I have cousins. I have a cousin whose kids work for my ex-wife. And I get a kick out of it because my kids work for her too. And so it's like she could just say, hey, all the Caracciolas, talking about, the lineage from my grandparents, hey, all the Caracciolas come to me because she has 4 people in this work environment that are all related to the Caracciolas in Italy. But we don't talk about history. We don't talk about culture. We talk about America, Americana. Me and a friend who was 10 years my junior, I remember this. I was going to college when I met her. And I was in the Marine Corps. I late bloomed. I went into college later. I was older. Um, Me and this person are able to talk about Big Smoke from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Who is Big Smoke? Big Smoke is the dude that you first meet. Big Smoke is the dude at the end who you last meet. But we have this unprocessed trauma of this guy, Big Smoke. If you played the game, you went through the storyline. I'm not giving away anything. But at the end of the game, you don't feel the same way about Big Smoke. This girl grew up in Saratoga Springs. I grew up in Glens Falls, New York. We never met until college. We only met in our college classes. And then we, like later on, met on, through social media. We still have that same Big Smoke experience, and we never met each other. That's what we do now. That's why somebody in upstate New York can watch Yellowstone and strive for that Beth status of being a loose cannon. Yeah, I meet all kinds of people that love Beth. Or they see the landman when he puts on his hat, does some cowboy shit. They see that, and that's them. Somebody in Montana, somebody in Utah, somebody in California, somebody in upstate New York can see that same thing and get that same Americana feeling. We're North boys around here. You know what I mean? We have camping, hunting, fishing, 45 minutes away. We have city boys who don't, like, I was surprised when I was doing rideshare and I'm driving around the Albany region, which is all city. And I'm seeing like groundhogs, rabbits, and deer in people's lawns because as soon as you leave the city, it's just wildlife. It's just swamp. It's just open. It's just woods begging to be developed because that's what we do in our region. We cut down trees to build blocks and roads. We don't know about history. I know about history. And what do I know about history? I don't know enough. I don't memorize things. I don't memorize facts. I recognize where things come together. You know what I mean? In my adult life, I wrote a piece about it. I think it's called Spillage, but it's about Neal Cassady, Dean Moriarty. He's Dean Moriarty in On the Road, but he's Neal Cassady, the actual man, in the electric Kool-Aid acid test. So it's like a sequel. You know what I mean? You have the Jack Kerouac version of Neal Cassady in a character named Dean Moriarty, where he's young and he's spinning and they're doing their thing. And then you have the later version of Neal Cassady, the actual man. And reading about him, he was like one of the original influencers. You probably don't even know his name. But he didn't actually write stuff. He wrote letters that inspired people. He talked so much that he inspired people. He was an influencer. You know what I mean? You're not going to pick up a book and be like, this is Neal Cassady's book. He didn't even finish the book he was writing. But Jack Kerouac wrote a book. Tom Wolfe wrote a book. I'm drawing a blank on Neal Cassady's wife's name when he had passed. She had wrote a book. So this one literary guy didn't actually write. In fact, he did. He wrote a letter He wrote a letter to Jack Kerouac, and it was like a 40-something page letter. Most of it exists in a museum. It disappeared for a while. But Jack Kerouac read this letter from Neal Cassady and was so inspired by the free flow prose that came out of this man's pen that Jack Kerouac was inspired to write On the Road. The voice of the Beat Generation came from a letter that Neal Cassady wrote. History. Now, I remember the first time I read the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. To me, Neal Cassady was just, he annoyed me because he was kind of like a bug. But as an adult, I call it spillage. Why do I call it spillage? I talk a lot. I think a lot. My poor girlfriend will be watching a TV show and I will see a visual interpretation of something and be like, what? And I will turn to her and I will sometimes stand up and I'm animated and I do voices and I will go off and I will go off and then I'll sit down because I already said everything that was in my head and she'll just be, okay. And we'll go back to watching our thing. But that's spillage. I actually say, I wasted that on you. I should have recorded it so I could type it later. Spillage. I have these ideas. I've made a joke recently. Should I come into money where I'm independently wealthy? All I need is an assistant to jot down my ideas. That's it. Because I could take over the freaking world if I had people that believed in me. I could take over the world. Now, I said I wrote that piece about Sarah Longwell. The piece on my page is called Sarah Longwell's a Loser. I feel like she is. When I'm listening to her talk about her stuff, when I'm listening to her talk about her ideas, she doesn't talk about real people. She doesn't talk like real things. She just kind of gives advice based off the TV characters that she assumes we're all into. And that's exactly it. I feel like Sarah Longwell, I feel like Sarah Longwell created an identity based off TV. And in creating her visual identity, she tries to hold everybody into account because her identity needs to be held together by everybody else's identity. That's what I feel. And so she's trying to measure everybody back in. When Sarah Longwell's telling people that they need moderates so she feels comfortable. When she's telling people to not use the word woke, they're saying that it sounds black. When she's talking about Hassan Piker, she isn't talking about a man who she watched, because as soon as she gets done talking about this Muslim man, she lumps in Zohran Mamdani as being a nefarious actor also. I've concluded Sarah Longwell is racist. She isn't racist in the way that she's trying to, kill black people. She's racist in the way that white culture has come through the television and given us one character perspective. I was talking about Greece, where the Italian people became Hispanic. The Marvels, Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel takes place in a Muslim family, and it is one of my favorite in the Marvel series, as the series itself, not the movies, but as the series itself, because it is just a nonstop into this one family's culture that is not our heritage. Anybody who's known comics the way I've known comics, the reason that everybody was green was because green was the cheap ink. The reason that everybody is an orphan is because the guys that were drawing it were writing it were orphans. The reason it all takes place in New York City or thereof is because that's where those people were coming from. Where am I going with this? We've been communicating to each other this whole time. There's an episode of MASH. Is it MASH? Where, let me jump over to Full House instead, because I know these details. There's an episode of Full House where Uncle Jesse becomes Greek Uncle Jesse. He wasn't Greek. But they bring in his Greek family. And they go through the Greek stereotypes where now Greek heritage is on my screen. Is it stereotypical? Yes. Like I was saying about MASH. Same thing with Jamie Farr. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name. The cross-dressing guy. I don't know why it's drawing me a blank. Because now that we're going into Iraq War, we're going to see a lot of trans. We're going to see a lot of cross-dressing. We're going to see a lot of gay. Because those are the people that are being kept from our military as they aim towards white people. But you get a stereotype of what people's heritage is. Actually, now that I said that, the Greek heritage, I think, and I know gypsy is a slur. The Romani. So on MASH, the guy's lineage was to the Romani. They call it gypsy at the time. And that was, for some people, that was the first look at that stuff. Same thing like I'm saying about Jesse Katsopoulos with his Greek heritage. We have the one-off episode that's about heritage. The show Girlfriends and the show Blackish. Girlfriends, not as much. But Blackish gets on my nerves because I understand the historical education. The show Blackish is one of the most toxic families that I had ever seen on television. For all of the good history and lineage that came with the show, lots of good stuff, nutrient stuff. That family was the worst family I'd ever seen. The dad literally expresses hating his son. The husband and wife literally don't talk to each other. They speak to each other. They don't communicate. Everybody's doing negative shit towards each other. It is... Malcolm in the Middle had more love than the family in Blackish. And it's not because I'm not black, so I don't get it. I get the historical aspect. I also understand a family, and a family that sticks together because we love each other, but doesn't express the love, doesn't express the consideration. That's not a good demonstration of a family, if you ask me. You know what I'm saying? We don't get enough actual history. I think about early 2000s. I remember having all these cable channels, and I would watch all the histories. I would watch all the science, all the everything. I'd binge it, how it's made. World War II. I will sit and watch the entire length of Band of Brothers when it's on Veterans Day or whenever historical day it comes to. Because the people that wrote that were involved, were knowledgeable, were inside. So it's smart. We don't get smart TV anymore. We don't get smart. Like, I can't watch sitcoms. I watch them because my girlfriend, I make the joke that she has pull my finger humor. So we watch sitcoms. Is it funny? Dude, we're communicating to each other. So when I'm watching a sitcom, I'm not watching, ha ha, funny show. I'm hearing writers, I'm hearing producers, I'm seeing a visual that somebody had wanted to communicate. I just watched the show AP Bio. We binged through the whole joint. It is a complete circle jerk to me, specifically me. Uh, I'm a Gen X. It's punk bumpers, not just. There's this alleged sound that came out after 2000 that's called punk. Punk music is late 70s into the late 80s. Anything else is new music. So AP Bio, the Ramones, not a known Ramones song, is the theme. And the main character is this guy. He got fired from Harvard. Yeah, Harvard. And he gets a job in his hometown teaching AP Bio. But he refuses to teach AP Bio. So he just kind of self-obsesses, and that's the class. The literal class begs to be taught biology. Like there's an episode where they have the pigs that you're supposed to dissect, and they freaked out. This is awesome. And then it just never happened. But communication, the writers on that show, the actors on that show, the producers on that show, everything about that show is talking to me, a guy who grew up, listening to rap when it first came out, a guy who grew up listening to punk, a guy who the 90s grunge era was put on like a coat because it made more sense than the other shit. I thank Nirvana every day, because once Nirvana went on MTV, I never again had to watch the Genesis video for I Can't Dance, where I watched these middle-aged rockers show how fucking out of touch they were, mocking a jeans commercial. Got your button flies? I now love Genesis music. I now love Phil Collins music. At that time, it was so fucking weak. The Genesis video for I Can't Dance was weak. In my head, I also associate, like, maybe there was like a Huey Lewis in the News video that was out at that time that I just remember thinking, this is fucking corny. Then grunge happened. Then Motown Philly happened, and my world had opened right up. Because like I was talking about AP Bio, somebody was talking to me. I write about Star Trek a lot, you know what I mean? And when I write about Star Trek, I'm pointing to Ticonderoga because there's the USS Ticonderoga. I'm pointing to Saratoga because the USS Saratoga is the ship that Benjamin Sisko was the captain of at Wolf 359, where his wife Jennifer was killed and where his ship blew up. Captain Janeway in Voyager, she talks about sailing on Lake George with a bottle of wine. Somebody from my area, with a knowledge of my area, wrote that script. They were talking to me. They were saying, I have this historical knowledge. So while we're watching our shows for entertainment, we're being communicated with, right? But the difference between now and the 90s when that was out, and you think about, and I talked about Full House, first season of Full House was 1987. The first album that Big Daddy Kane put out was in 1987 also. That was a dynamic change. And why do I always talk about, I talk about Stephanie Tanner and Big Daddy Kane because they both came on our screen at the same time. And I talk about that in the sense, rap music created the trend. The next year on Full House, the rap music trend, Full House is the Sears catalog version of that trend a year later. Like if you notice in the later episodes, when their identities are kind of whatever, you see them dragging a little bit baggier, a little bit funkier with their muted tones, whereas African culture is brighter and vibrant. And, you know, Caucasian culture is muted earth tones. You know, because we don't want to be exciting. We don't want to be flashy. Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of talking. I'm realizing I'm coming up on an hour and a half of just me kind of having my own morning show because nobody was talking. I spent my morning. I woke up at 4:30, and you know, nobody's talking about anything. They're talking about hope. They're speculating. You know, I'll hear one group of people who'll be talking about Donald Trump did this, but then I'll be on Substack, and they'll be covering Jared Kushner, as they should. They'll be covering J.D. Vance with Orban, as they should. They'll be covering all of the news out of Iran. Do you realize that my news, I look at American media to find out what gets through. People talk about Twitter like it's a bad thing. I have got more OSINT from local regions through Twitter. So when I hear people say Twitter's a cesspool, Twitter's a bad place, in my head I'm thinking, who the fuck are you subscribing to? Because I get notifications. Jackie Singh is another person that you guys should be following on Substack. Singh, S-I-N-G-H, Jackie Singh. I get all, like, as a matter of fact, now I'm thinking about it, that's the majority of my notifications is from Jackie Singh. You don't know her name. I do. I'm telling you. But I know that when all of a sudden I'll rattle off a factoid or I'll rattle off of something, odds are pretty good it came from that, from X, from a notification that I got. I have suppressed news. I have OSINT. I have all kinds of stuff. I'm getting images of stuff inside Iran. I'm getting images of stuff happening in Lebanon. You know what I mean? And it's not like on, you know, Facebook, oh, that's AI. That's not this. You should really do your research. Okay. While you're questioning what I'm putting up, I'm talking to people that they're right there. They can smell the dead body right next to them that's still cooking. You know what I'm saying? We've been conditioned to not recognize how to read media. We've been conditioned to react to it. I have my responses put in my pocket, but I'm too creative and articulate to use them. But we get them. God, I think about that. Like, I'll hop in Wajahat Ali. I'll get in his thing. I'll get in Wajahat Ali. I'll get in Ellie Leonard. I'll get in Lev. I'll get in Zeb. I'll get in Wolfpack. And I'll watch the chat just blow up and suck on their dicks and praise them and worry about their health and tell them to drink water and, you know, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. All the praise for the people that were watching in the chat or on the vid, it gets in the way of having actual discussion. You know what I'm saying? It gets in the way of actual discussion. Waj is authentic. Ellie's authentic. Zeb Shalev is highly humble. And he doesn't need to be. Holy cow. I am amazed by Zeb Shalev. And like I was just talking about Jackie Singh, you know what I'm saying? Zeb Shalev, I'll drop out of a Waj. I'll drop out of an Ellie because Zeb is talking. I will get so much news out of a Zev where I'm just opening tabs. Anyway, I'm gonna dip out. I'm Nick G. This is my couch. If you plant me, I grow. If you're gonna believe in something, why not believe in me?